goodness. I thought I was filming that whole thing. I just ranted for like 15 minutes before I realized I wasn't filming, so that's fun. That's a potential downside that I just realized of doing the videos instead of typing. Oops. Whatever. Restart, back up, rewind. Okay. So I was talking a little bit, before I jumped into the whole idea of this cult of youth, I was talking a little bit about how the Western societies treat the elderly versus the traditional societies, and I just wanted to comment on the isolation of elders in our society and how it is really kind of this byproduct of all of these all of this emphasis on self-reliance and just quickly moving forward, and this advancement, this fast-paced society really has left a lot of the elders behind. And I think it's kind of ironic that it is these ideologies that they came up with in their youth that are now coming around to kind of bite them in the ass, or sorry, bite them in the butt, and, you know, kind of coming around to result in them being isolated and them being kind of left behind. And it really is sad. And I'm so thrown off now because in my last video, or sorry, not video, when I thought I was filming myself, I was like on a roll. I was going so good, and now that just threw me totally off. Oh, I wanted to comment on the emergence of social media and this kind of new dominance of the virtual world coming about. I think that has a lot to do with the anger and, you know, frustration coming out of the elderly population, or at least here in Medicine Hat. I'm not really sure about the rest of the weird societies or North America, but I know here in Medicine Hat, a lot of the stigma around the elderly population here is that they're angry and they're rude and they're entitled, and, you know, all of this stuff. They're just not really respected as much as they used to be, at least from what I hear from the younger population here in town. And I think that anger that surrounds them is largely due to the fact that they feel very much like they've been left behind. They're being isolated by their families, and for a lot of these people, they are the last of their original families left. Like, maybe all of their siblings have passed away, their parents are gone, their aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody is either very old or has already passed away. And so a lot of these old people feel very frustrated. They feel like the world's moving on without them, and they don't understand technology. They feel disconnected from their own families, and they feel disconnected from the virtual world, and, you know, from everything. And there's nobody stepping up to the plate to show, or to, I guess, to involve these elders in our new way of life. They're just kind of being left behind and pushed to the wayside. And because we're not more actively including them even within allo-parenting or within our own households, it is resulting in a lot of these elders feeling very neglected, and it's really sad. The simple fact that there is that whole movement in the UK to end loneliness, that breaks my heart. Like, these people presumably have families and, I would hope, social networks, and yet they find themselves completely isolated. And it's really sad, and I think it is due to the fast pace of our society now that a lot of these old people don't want to be a burden. They don't want to feel like they're a problem to their family. They don't want to feel like they're slowing anybody down or impeding their progress, and so they just kind of suffer in silence instead of saying anything to their families because they don't want to slow them down. And that is a byproduct of this fast-paced, consumeristic society of, you know, self-reliance and just constantly needing to be moving, be working on something, and you know, our value of the individual is very much placed on what they can contribute to the society. And I guess as soon as someone is retired, they're not seen as valuable anymore, and that's really sad because we have so much that we could be learning from our elders. As for the cult of youth, obviously we see it everywhere in our society today. How we speak, I think, is a huge thing, at least within my own personal life. There's this disdain, this like fear of getting older, and it's bizarre because even the whole concept of what old is has changed. Like, I'm 23 and I don't consider myself to be old. I very much feel like I'm a leveled up teenager. Like, I'm a bottom ranking adult. I just got my first credit card. Like, I'm obviously there's different rites of passage for each society. Like, that's kind of funny for me to mention that I just got a credit card, because that is very much a Western society kind of rite of passage, or hallmark of an adult, I guess. And it's funny that I even consider that when I'm considering my age. But anyway, I don't consider myself to be old, and yet I find a lot of people in my social circle, my friends, my sister, everybody, they're like so afraid of turning 30. And that's so crazy to me, because 30, I've heard from my parents and from my grandparents that your life really begins once you turn 30. You're done floundering around in your 20s trying to figure out what you're trying to do, and by your 30s, you're a little bit more knowledgeable, you have a little bit more experience under your belt, but you're still young enough to get stuff done. Like, I'm excited about my 30s. I hope that I'm thriving in my 30s, and yet society has made me feel like turning 30 is like this big scary thing, that I'm gonna lose my youth, and I'm not gonna be as vital of a person anymore. And it's just bizarre, because 30 is like 30% of life now, with people living to be 100 or more. That's 30% of your life, and people have already considered their life over at 30. That's really sad. That is really scary, because if I've already peaked in my life, what's the point? you know? Also, a lot of self-deprecation that I hear can be surrounded by age, like, terms like old lady or hag, or, like old man, blah, 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 stuff like that. It's used as kind of an insult, which I think is strange. And I also wrote down disdain for gray hairs, because, oh my goodness, the fear of grays. Personally, I'm gonna call myself out a little bit here, but I honestly just don't really care. I started getting gray hairs when I was like 14 years old, and I don't know if it was genetics, or if it was just because I started dyeing my hair when I was really young and it just like nixed my pigment. I'm not really sure what happened there, but I've been comfortable with the idea of gray hairs for like a pretty long time. And it's strange to me how absolutely terrified my sister and a lot of my friends are of gray hairs, and I'm just like, it is what it is. Social media obviously is huge enforcer of the cult of youth and all of that. Youth is romanticized, it's praised. Pop stars often fall off the face of the earth. They just like fall off the map as soon as they turn 30. You just don't hear from them anymore until later they reemerge in their 40s with like some awesome rock album or something. I also just wanted to point out a couple people that I saw their comments that stood out to me. Tyson mentioned that social media has become a marketing platform, and I think that's a really good point, because it totally has. Like, you cannot scroll through any social media without it just blasting ads at you, and it very much is focusing and targeting young people, which Emily actually made a point about how she works in I think she called it network marketing, and how youth products are targeted to young people, which I thought was really interesting as well, because that's not something I've ever really taken into consideration, that you never see these ads for collagen and these ads for, oh, this will lift your face and this will make you look younger, blah, blah. The person or the people in these ads are usually no more than like 35 or 40 years old. They're young people, but they're being targeted these, oh, maintain your youth and this and that, and it's so strange. And then even worse, on social media, you see the people using these products are in their 20s, or sometimes even younger than that, like teenagers who are trying to market these youth products. It's so strange. It's so bizarre. You would think that it would be older people who are trying to maintain their youth, not young people trying to, prevent aging, which it's just such a bizarre concept, because it is inevitable. It's, I don't know, it just seems strange to me. Very strange. Also, Amanda made a good point about she mentioned that she's a mom, and that her kids have made comments to her about wanting to wear makeup, and about having some body image thoughts and concerns, and I had to comment on that, because it breaks my heart. My little niece, Zavi, she's 9 years old, she just turned 9 this year, and all the time, she has already internalized so much of this cult of youth, in that she all the time thinks that she needs to be perfect and flawless, and she all the time, I notice her doing stuff like this, and she is 9 years old, and she's already worried about her face being saggy and this and that, and she always talks about how she's not skinny enough, and she doesn't look the right way, and this and that. And I know that that's less about age and more about body image, I guess, and appearances, but it's just as important, and it is just as heartbreaking, the ramifications of this romanticizing of youth and romanticizing of this certain cut of person that not everyone can fall into. It's just toxic, and it's really upsetting. What else did I put? Oh, I also wrote down that it is very normalized in our society for old people not to be adventurous. Like, when you see any kind of an advertisement for vacations or like hiking or skydiving or all of this like fun adventurous stuff, it's always marketed towards young people. And I think that that's very strange because simultaneously young people are pushed to work while we're young, while we're capable, but at the same time we're also pushed to go out and live while we're young and while we're capable. So we're expected to work full time so that we can afford to retire while also going out and living our life before we retire. It's kind of this strange contradiction, because how do we do both at the same time? Like, by the time you're retired, you're considered old and unable to do anything by yourself, but if you don't work through your youth, you're not able to retire. But, like, if you work your whole life, or if you spend your whole life working, then you didn't actually live. I don't know. It's just all very confusing. I also mentioned that even in films, lead male roles are often able to age, like they're able to show their age. They can have like great beards, they can have wrinkles, all of that stuff. But often we see within the same movie, even sometimes the lead female is often depicted as very young, very youthful. Even if they're an older woman, they're given, they're airbrushed, they've got makeup on. Very much it's almost pushed a little bit more heavily on women to maintain their youth than it is for men, and I think that that's kind of bizarre as well. Even just something like, I was thinking about this earlier today, and Snapchat filters, if you're familiar with them, a lot of them smooth out wrinkles, they smooth out fine lines, and that also has to do with this cult of youth. But I also noticed that a lot of these filters automatically have like mascara or fake eyelashes or something on the filter, or blush or makeup, and so to me that seems like they're very much marketing it or aiming it towards a female target audience is the females, because like you would think that if this is such a complex about age within our society, you would think that they would be marketing these smoothing filters to men as well, but they seem to be exclusively targeted to women, which I think is kind of interesting. And I mean, maybe that is just to do with, I guess, it's more normalized for women to take selfies than it is men, but that's not even true anymore, because you do see selfies of both, and yet, for some reason, these filters seem to be exclusively marketed to women. Very strange. It's kind of a brain fart that I had earlier today. I was also going to kind of circle back to the TV ad thing. You only really see old people in ads that are specifically marketed to old people. Like if it's like I'm trying to think of something, like a I've fallen and I can't get up kind of ad, they'll use old actors for that. But if it's like any kind of an ad for, well, pretty much anything else, they use young people because they want to place that emphasis of value on young people, on young, vital people. And then I also just wrote down sex sells, because this has been known for so long, for as long as advertisement has been an active part of society, sex has been used to sell things. And obviously young people are the one who are seen as sexually vital and sexually able, so young people are going to be the ones that we see selling things and marketing things, because that's seen as attractive, that's seen as desirable, and you want something that is seen as desirable to be tied to your product, so that by association that will also seem desirable. Like, oh wow, that young, good-looking person is using that, so I must use that too, so that I'll be associated with all of those young, good-looking people. It's just bizarre. I think that's all of the points that I wanted to make. So really,